Hello everyone, a very warm welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel and to another episode of Eddie versus the Algorithm, this time for Game Week 2, the series here on FPL YouTube where I put my own free hit team of the week up against the Algorithm's AI highest predicted point scoring team for that game week of the season. Last week it was a very high scoring week for both teams, so the AI scoring very well in the high 80s, but my score in the 90s did actually end up beating the Algorithm team. I was able to go without the likes of Man City assets though, etc, so I do have that benefit of being on the free hit in this series every week of the season. Let's see if we can hopefully get a good performance once more this week and make it 2-0 to myself as we perform this feat over the entire 38 game weeks of the season. So that makes the score 1-0 as we head into game week 2 now. If you are new around here, then do make sure to subscribe. The last video got a lot of support, so thank you very much. So if you're one of the new people around here, do make sure to hit that button. And if you're a returning viewer, then thanks very much to you as well for continuing to support the series as we get into having a look at the Algorithm's highest predicted point scoring side for game week 2. And so you can see the score will be updated throughout the series. At the bottom of your screen now, you can see that nicely says Eddie 1, Algorithm 0. So we've got 38 points up for grabs over the course of the season. We'll see what the score ends up being and whether or not I can beat the Algorithm once more over a season. This week, the Algorithm is predicted 68 points, and to do that, it's put together this 11 in a 4-3-3 formation. And in goal for the Algo side this week is going to be Leno. So one of the more favourable fixtures defensively. Leicester at home does look like a good opportunity for a side to keep a clean sheet. Fulham have recently just invested a little bit more in their defence. They've made a few signings. In fact, they brought in Anderson from Crystal Palace. They've brought in Sander Berg as well, who looks like a great signing. I'm not sure either of those options will be actually fit, ready and available to get straight into the team and have trained enough with the side to be just thrown straight into the 11 for this weekend's fixture. However, it is promising for the Fulham defence that they are investing in the back, and they do have some very capable defenders already at the club. Leno is one of those goalkeepers who's got a very fantastic FPL record for his price, so he's often priced very cheap, and he does make good saves. He is one of those keepers who's pretty decent at preventing XGC instead of being those ones who doesn't make many saves and tends to concede quite a lot of goals. So he's definitely not impartial to a 10-plus pointer, and this could be a good option just to maybe bank 6 or 7 points if Fulham do manage to keep the clean sheet. He is very good in the bonus as well, so I wouldn't write him off that if Fulham do in fact manage to keep Leicester out in that one. In defence, we're going to see a back four with Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robinson, Ruben Dias, and then Munoz of Crystal Palace. So a pretty standard back line, all apart from one option. I would say Ruben Dias is one that you're not going to see in many teams, but is the Man City asset of choice that the Algorithm has decided to go for. Wouldn't be my pick. You'll see in my side in a minute if I've decided to go for a Man City option, who that is. But the other three I do really like. You've got 3 home fixtures for Liverpool, as I already mentioned. We've already talked about Fulham with Robinson, and then Munoz of Crystal Palace, who looked very attacking, picked up an assist for that own goal in game week 1. So he's continued to get forward and do well for that Crystal Palace side. He could have had a lot more goals, to be honest, in game week 1. So you've got 3 very attacking fullbacks there with home fixtures, very favourable oppositions. There's not really too much to complain about there, and there are a few other options you can pick up. But overall, these options are ones that look like they could deliver. Robinson's got good assist threat. We know about Trent already. And overall, I can see why the Algorithms decided to go maybe a little bit more investment in the defence for this game week. We'll move into the midfield then and have a look at midfield 3, which I assume is going to at least have one locked-in player. That is Mo Salah. It's then gone with Eric Eze and then also Kevin De Bruyne, who is a differential that I have to admit, I do like the look of a lot, and I didn't think too much about when I was putting together my own team for this week. Now, I think the reason for this is probably in my brain and in a lot of your brains. We can't really afford De Bruyne at the moment. You've got Saka, whoever else you've got in your premium midfield. You've got Salah and Haaland to afford. Kevin De Bruyne has just never really been an option. He's been one that hasn't got the same upside maybe as some of those other premium midfield options. And when you've got so much funds invested elsewhere, it's hard to get De Bruyne into your side. But he's one that is going to have to be relied upon, especially for these first few game weeks of the season, as players like Foden reintroduced back into the starting 11 and given more minutes. De Bruyne played well against Chelsea. He could easily be the one feeding Haaland for this game week, as we've seen time and time again as Man City take on Ipswich at home. You can't really ask for a better fixture than that over the entire season, really. So a very favourable fixture there, and a player that if I had the money for on my side, maybe I would have gone for. I've opted for a different option in there. And then finally, Eze, who did blanking in week 1, but definitely shouldn't have blanked, whether that's down to refereeing decisions, whether it's down to players missing chances, not holding their runs just a little bit. I was very scared watching that as someone who doesn't own Eze in my own team, and that kind of says a lot. I even considered transferring him in for game week 2 because of how much I feared not owning him, how good he looked during that game, how I feel that when, eventually the points do come, they're going to come in great quantity. So Eze quite rightly makes it into this 11 against the West Ham side, who didn't look too bad in game week 1, but are one of those oppositions that you're not going to be afraid of targeting with your assets this season. And then finally, we're going to see the forwards, who is going to consist of course, Erling Haaland, who takes the captain's armband. We've then got Muniz, and we've got Chris Wood as well. So I can see where those funds have been kind of come from. It's gone with the 2 budget strikers, who do look very good. Chris Wood grabbed a goal and max bonus in game week 1. He's away at Southampton, where again, you kind of back Nottingham Forest to grab a goal or 2 there at least. There are rumours around Eddie Nketiah, but that deal is, even if it does get a bit accepted, not going to get finalised, not going to get in for game week 2. So you'd imagine Chris Wood will see quite a few minutes again this game week, and a good chance of another goal in that one. And then Muniz, who some people might have had on the bench against Manchester United in game week 1, did look a little bit quiet, to be honest, but Fulham, these are the fixtures now, game week 2 to game week 5, where you really back them. And that completes a Fulham triple up in this case. So there are other options in that Fulham team. They've added some extra firepower, but Muniz is definitely going to be the one who's playing up front the majority of the time. You've got Jimenez on the bench, who might take some minutes away from him. He's not the most secure for expected minutes, and it is that 70-minute mark where you could see Muniz coming off for Jimenez quite a few points this season. But Leicester at home, if you're not going to back him in that fixture, you've got to back him in this one. Otherwise, you're not going to back him in any fixture, basically. And I think it's a good week for Muniz owners, and should be excited for this game week, I reckon. On the bench then, just to round things up, we've got Winks, Howard, Bellis, and Trippier, which is a bit weird to have a extra, I think, 2 million tucked away there, down there on the bench for a player who didn't even start last game week. Seems a bit bizarre to me, but the algorithm does weird things when it has funds left over sometimes. So, with that being said, we've got 68 predicted points for this one. My team was predicted 66. Let's take a look at my side now and how it compares against the algorithms. So, I've also gone for a 4 at the back formation. I've just gone for a 4-4-2 instead. And I've got some very similar personnel that you'll recognise from the other team in this side too. So, a bit of the defence looks the same. You've got Trent and Robinson in there. However, as a bit of a differential cheeky punt, I've gone with Mitchell instead of Munoz. He had a good chance and front of goal in the game in game week 1, Mitchell. And I think that he's maybe been a bit overshadowed by his fullback counterpart on the other side of the pitch. So I just thought maybe I'll take a cheeky stab at him and maybe that will pay off. I've then gone with Rico Lewis as my Man City defensive option of choice. Now he should play, hopefully, in this game in game week 2 with Walker kind of not getting too many minutes at the start of this season. There's always that risk with Pep that maybe he doesn't, or maybe it's an early sub for Rico Lewis. We've seen that in the past. But if he does start, Vardiol is more sitting back rather. Rico Lewis is the one inverting, getting forward, getting to the byline even sometimes. We saw that against Chelsea, and that's why I've decided to take a bit of a punt and go for him instead of Vardiol even, who would be a more secure minutes option. I've then gone with Vicario in goal, just to kind of get an extra fixture in there against a different team, spread the clean sheet odds a little bit, and go with the Spurs man. And I've also gone with another Spurs man in midfield. I've decided to back Heung-min Son in this game against Everton. I want to see him getting inside a bit more. I'm hoping we will see that. He did kind of drift in and make a few chances for Solanke, but in game week 1, Leicester were really overcrowding the big man up top for Spurs. And I think on another day, with maybe a right back who's a little bit weaker, Son could get even more chances down to the byline, cutting it back across, maybe getting an assist, maybe even just going for goal himself. And so I kind of back him in this game against Everton. They're not the worst defence in the world. We'll see that in a minute when we discuss the captaincy. We've got some stats for some of the fixtures to target this week. But I had a bit of funds left over, and I thought I'd go for him. Didn't have that extra space for Kevin De Bruyne, as I've gone for Bernardo Silva instead at 6.5 million. Now, he's not going to be a long-term pick, really. Gundogan signing back now is another competition for that Manchester City midfield spot. But Bernardo Silva looked pretty good against Chelsea, in my eyes. 6.5 million, feeding Haaland, getting a few chances here and there. I think for him, 6.5 million, it was either him or Doku, and I've just taken a punt on Bernardo because I can't stand watching Doku's end product, all in all. So then we've got Eze and Salah as the final two midfielders, and Haaland taking the captain's armband, obviously, and Muniz up front. The bench just full of absolute jobbers and bench filler, but we'll discuss the captaincy now. Erling Haaland is he the best captain for this week? Probably. Is he worth the triple captain's armband? That's a different question. Maybe we need to answer. So the data isn't really in so far for this season. You can't really conclude too much on expected goals conceded. So we've used for the captaincy matrix this week the data for Brentford and Everton from last season. Ipswich, if you're wondering, against Liverpool had an expected goals conceded over the 90 minutes of 3.11. So in that game, you could say Liverpool and Man City are very similar levels of attack. Therefore, you could arguably argue that that kind of number is comparable for this fixture against Man City for Ipswich. So it's very hard to go off the back of 90 minutes. That's why we're not using those numbers for game week 1 for Brentford and Everton. We're using their numbers from last season and kind of taking the fact that their defence hasn't changed overly dramatically. But the top row suggests that the predicted points go massively in favour of Erling Haaland. 9.4 is one of the highest you'll ever see in a single game week. With Salah on 6.9 and Son down on 4.9. Not sure how much that game week 1 low score is taken into account there. So yeah, out of Everton and Brentford, it's pretty close. But Ipswich, we don't have too much to go on. They were one of the best defences in the Championships last season, but often that isn't saying an awful lot at all. The step up, as we know, is a very, very big one to the Premier League. Sides-wise, Liverpool are the best attack, 2.40 expected goals per 90 last season for them. Man City, not too far behind, and then an even bigger gap down to Spurs on 1.8 per 90. And Mohamed Salah leads the way on an expected FPL individual note per player, and Haaland on 7.7 expected FPL points per 90. And this is all taken from the OptaStats tool over on the Fantasy Football Fix website if you want to check that out. So are Ipswich worth targeting with your triple captain's armband? I think the discussion around that is mainly due to the fact that this season we will have fewer double game weeks. It looks like we'll have 2 kind of as a base. And as well as that, we've got an extra chip. So not only have you got a triple captain, you've got a bench boost you want to use in a double game week. You've got a free hit you're probably going to want to use in a double game week. And then you've also got that mystery chip, which we don't know what it is yet. But chips often go hand in hand with targeting big game weeks, etc, etc. So if you are going to end up using your triple captain on a single game week player, the argument is there isn't really a stronger option to target than Haaland at home against Ipswich. A team that are new to the Premier League, maybe haven't had as much time to adapt yet. But the counter-argument to that is they're, of course, new to the Premier League with a high attitude. Hopefully that result against Liverpool for them won't hurt them too much. They might go to the Etihad, try and shut up shop, and maybe do a good job putting 2 or 3 players marking Erling Haaland in this fixture. So it could really go one or 2 ways. It could obviously go a multitude of ways. Haaland could get a blank. He could get 1 goal. He could come away with a hat-trick. And you've got to make that call yourself. Go with your gut feeling is my advice here. Don't just not do it because you're scared or because you're worried other people aren't doing it. Just make your own decision based on your own intuition, what you've seen so far from the football, the stats if you want to take those into account. But yeah, in my view, there is quite a strong case for going for it. And I quite like just having a bit of fun at the start of the season when often it's pretty boring with no one using any of their chips. I think it's nice to see someone doing it a little bit different. And why not lead the way and do that yourself? Obviously, if it goes badly, then you'll be a bit down in the dumps and be a bit stinky, but it's FPL at the end of the day. It's only a game. Why not have some fun? But yeah, after that lesson, hopefully you're impressed with what I've presented so far today, the algorithm and my own teams. I'm hoping I'll be more impressed at the end of the game week with my score than the AI teams. Let me know down below in the comments which team you think will score higher for this game week. And with that, I wish you guys the best of luck for game week 2. May your arrows be green, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.